Hey guys, and welcome back to another Automate Processes video tutorial on setting up a basic website. In this third part, we're going to continue where we left off last time, and we got our buttons to load in the text of where we want our links to go, but we haven't actually set up the links yet. So let's go ahead and set that up. I'm going to go back up to scene 1 and then over to Flash Develop. So now that we're in this setup nav buttons function and we're setting the text, what we can do is we can set an event listener to the button as well. And once we click on the button, we can make it do something. So after we set the button text, let's set up an event listener for our button. So what we're going to do is get our reference to our button with MC nav button and add an event listener to that. We're going to be listening for the click event, and when the user clicks on this button, we're going to go to a function called nav click. Okay, so let's set up that function below. Let's set up a private function. It's going to be called nav click. And just like our page loaded function, whenever we add an event listener to an object and we're sending it to a function, we have to give it a parameter of what event we're sending. So in this case, it's going to be an E, and we can data type that to a mouse event because we're listening for the click, which is a mouse event. And let's not return anything, so we'll set that to void and open close the curly braces. Okay, so once we get to this nav click function, we don't know which button has clicked on it yet, so we want to obviously filter that. So if we click on the home button, we obviously want to go to the home page and not the gallery. So in here, let's set up a switch statement to test which button was clicked. So if you're not familiar with a switch statement, it's basically, think of it as a bunch of if statements all stuck together, but a lot cleaner to look at and read. So I'm going to start this off by typing in switch, and this is basically, you can think of switch as if in this case. So if our event.target, so which button that we're clicking on, and we open close the curlies just like we do with an if statement. But instead of saying do something, we want to target which case is going to do something with a particular action. So inside the curlies, I'm going to say case, and if the button that was clicked was our home button, then go ahead and do something, and then stop doing whatever you're doing with a break statement. And let's just clean that up. Likewise, we can use case again. If our gallery button was clicked, then go ahead and do something, but then break out of the switch. And lastly, if it was our contact button that was clicked, go ahead and do something, and then break out. So I'm just going to tap these in a bit. So if we click on a home button, we obviously want to load our home page. And luckily, we made this handy little function here called load page. And we can call upon it just like we have up here in our index file, in our index constructor function. So I'm going to say load page, and let's just load in our home page. And for our gallery, let's load in our gallery page. Remember, we're just passing it the names of our Swift files and not the Swift or the directory name. And lastly, let's load page our contact. Okay, so it looks like our script's pretty much done for clicking on our buttons. Let's see what happens when we go ahead and test it. So we get our home page loading in. If I click on the gallery, nothing happens. Why? So this is a common problem that throws a lot of people, like, well, I'm clicking on my gallery button, why isn't anything working? or sometimes if you just click outside of the text, nothing will happen. And what you want to do is when we're in this setup nav function, setup nav buttons function, just before we add the event listener, we want to set up a few properties for our button, and we'll set up our MC nav button. We'll set its mouse children to equal false. What this line does is it says any objects that are inside of this button, ignore the click events on them and just treat all of them as one grouped object, which is exactly what we want for this nav link. So save that and test again, and you should see when you click on these buttons now, well, they are loading our page, but there's a small problem and they're all loading one on top of each other. So obviously we've got to fix that. That's not very presentable. So let's go back to our code and figure out what we want to do. So when we load something in and we add its child to the display list, it doesn't get rid of anything that was there before it, and we want to do that. So to make this a bit more manageable, what I'm going to do is go back to Flash, and I'm going to create an empty movie clip in my scene 1. So to create an empty movie clip, I'm going to press Control and then F8, and the symbol name I'm going to give it is going to be called holder, and go ahead and press OK. So this is an empty movie clip, there's nothing in here, so we're just going to go back out to scene 1, and in our library we've got now a holder clip over here. So I'm just going to drag that out to the stage, and I'm going to give it an instance name of page holder. So this is going to hold all the pages that we load. So instead of attaching them to the stage, we're going to attach them to this clip. And I'm just going to move it up here for the time being. About here will do. And let's save our work. Go back into Flash Develop. Because we added this to the stage, just like we did our buttons, we have to reference it in our code. So always get into the habit of once you add something to the stage, go ahead and declare a public variable for it in your code. So page holder was the name of our movie clip. Cool, so let's save that. And now instead of attaching our or adding our content to the stage, let's add it to our page holder movie clip instead. I'm going to save that and test again. And you can see the home page is actually offset now, because what it does when you load something into a container is it picks where the container is, and Flash automatically aligns the top left corner of our stage or the clip that we're loading in. So in this case we're loading in the home page. It's taking this top left hand corner and it's pushing it right where these coordinates are here. So that's why it looks off center like that. So to correct that, we can just highlight our page holder clip on our main stage, go to the align panel and make sure align to stage is turned on, and we're going to push this in the top left corner by clicking on the align left and align top. And there we are up here. So when we save and test again, it'll look like our home page is normally loading where it's meant to. So there's no difference though. Once we click on these pages, they're still going to overlap. So what we need to do is we need to get rid of any old child objects that are attached to this clip before we add the new one. So in our code, let's comment that to see what I mean by getting rid of the old. So as soon as we enter this page loaded function, we're going to test if a page is already loaded. And if the page is already loaded, let's go ahead and remove the page. Okay, so to test if a page is loaded, I'm going to say if our page holder, if its number of children, so it has a child object in it, if it's greater than 0, actually greater than or equal to 1, yeah, we'll leave it at that. That'll do for the time being. If it's greater than or equal to 1, meaning it has at least one child object, let's go ahead and remove that page. So we'll say page holder dot remove child at, and we want to remove it from its first position, so the 0 object. Remember, just like an array, we always start our first position at 0 and then we go 1, 2. So the number of children, its positioning starts at 1 in terms of layers that build up one on top of each other. So let's save that and give it another test. Now when we click on our gallery, it's getting rid of the old page that was loaded and it's loading in the new one immediately after it. So this is how we get our different paging to work. So one last thing we're going to do is, the user doesn't actually know that these are navigation buttons for the moment, so let's inform them by changing the mouse cursor to a little pointy hand. I'm going to go back to Flash Develop, and over here where we set our mouse children to false, let's set our MC nav button, let's change its button mode to be true. So let's save that and test again. And now when you hover over these links, you can see a mouse cursor changes into a little hand pointer, so the user knows that, oh, I can actually click on this now. And it's just a quick little user interface type of change, which you should include whenever you want your user to be able to interact with something and let them know. Cool, so that is working, and I think that will do it for this tutorial too. In the next tutorial, we're going to get some animations happening. So we're going to use the Flash inbuilt tweener to actually change the look of these gallery buttons when we hover over them, so the user knows that, oh, okay, you can interact with this button, or just draw their attention to it basically. And we're going to use the built-in tweener with Flash because I don't want to do anything with external libraries yet. And yes, you can use GreenSock's amazing Tween Lite and Tween Max for it, but because this is just a basic website and we're just getting up and running with Flash for these tutorials, we're just going to use everything that comes with Flash. So yeah, hope you got something out of this one, and catch you guys next time.